Hello and welcome. Are you the kind of person who feels drained after a party, preferring a quiet night with a good friend, maybe a good book? Do you find yourself overthinking a conversation long after it's ended? Or maybe you just feel misunderstood when your silence is mistaken for disinterest.
This is the Introverted Apostle, the podcast for Christian introverts who love their faith but struggle with the social side of church life. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by large gatherings, exhausted by small talk at church events, or unsure of how to get involved without burning out, then this is the podcast for you. I'm your co-host, David Wilson, and I am a proud introvert.
And I'm your co-host, Roman Asbill, and I too am a proud introvert. Join us as we explore the unique challenges introverts face in the church, in our communities, and how to navigate them with grace. We'll dive into topics like finding meaningful ways to serve, balancing solitude with community, overcoming the pressure to be more outgoing, and embracing your quiet strengths as spiritual gifts. In each episode, we'll dive into the nuances of the introverted personality, moving past those tired stereotypes that need to die, and uncovering the true strengths that lie within. We'll talk about managing social energy, succeeding in an extroverted world, and most importantly, embracing who you are.
We would like to thank the Catholic Diocese of Amarillo, the Carlo Acutis Podcast Network, and all of the volunteers who are serving as our guests for this podcast. I would also like to shout out to my beautiful and amazing wife, Neely Clark Wilson, whose brainchild is this podcast. We also want to make it clear that we are not psychologists or theologians. We are not the experts by any means. We're just introverts who overthink for fun and decided to hit record while doing it.
Word.
In today's episode, we're going to explore what introversion is. So, find your coziest spot, grab a cup of joe, and let's begin our quiet journey together. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Heavenly Father, please open our eyes, ears, heart, and mind to your word. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our guest today is Dayna Schertler. Dayna is a licensed social worker. She's a counselor for West Texas A&M, a very important person there at the university. She and I worked together for many years when I worked at the university. So Dayna, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So Dayna, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am the director of counseling, medical, and rec sports at WT. I'm a clinical social worker. I primarily work with lots of other therapists and counselors. I used to be a raging extrovert. I've come more to center, I think, as I've aged. I married my cute Catholic boyfriend 30 years ago, and he's very introverted. Most of my favorite people, introverted. So that's pretty much it.
So Dayna, how do we define introversion today? How's it different from just being shy? Which I know a lot of people, if they meet somebody that's introverted that has any kind of personality, they're like, "You're introverted? I had no idea," because they just expect an introvert to be somebody that's over in the corner hiding or shivering.
Sure.
But,
Yeah. Well, and I think for most introverts, it just takes a while to warm up. And once they've observed and sort of processed information and figured out that you're okay, they aren't going to be maybe on display as shyness. In fact, lots of people, like you're saying, misinterpret introversion as shyness or misinterpret introversion as standoffishness, but it really is more about energy and how you get your energy, how you deplete your energy. Extroverts, the fastest way to make an extrovert unhappy is to isolate them for a long time. But the fastest way for an introvert to lose their energy, not want to connect, is to make them spend a lot of time in things like small talk, large gatherings, extended period of being social. And so it's really more like a battery. Extroverts gain energy from social gatherings. Introverts generally deplete themselves when they're with lots of people or have to do things that they may perceive as less meaningful, less introspective. Mm-hmm.
If you're wondering if you're introverted or extroverted and you're not sure, go to a 2-hour dinner party and everybody that comes up missing is introverted. As I say that tongue in cheek. That's not true of everyone, but it's kind of true.
It's kind of
I
true.
used to wonder if people that were smoking in the backyard
Yeah.
were introverted because
Yes.
are they really smokers or do they just want to stand in the backyard?
They just
Right.
wanted to get away.
Yeah.
Away from other people.
Yep.
So there's this article that I came across the other day, and it's based on the popular framework by Jonathan Cheek. Basically, it breaks introversion down into 4 different types. And it really spoke to me because as I looked through it, I was like, okay, I used to be this one, now I'm this one. And so those 4 different ones are social introvert, a thinking introvert, an anxious introvert, and a restrained or reserved introvert. And I was definitely an anxious introvert when I was in high school.
Here.
Yeah.
Yep.
A restrained or reserved introvert in college. I observed people to see how the room felt, and before I would speak up. And now I would say that I'm definitely in the social introvert stage of my life, and which basically they prefer small groups or alone time over large crowds. They can enjoy socializing, but choose to keep their circles small and interactions meaningful. And so I definitely enjoy interacting with the people I care about most, my friends, my family, church friends. That's a big thing for me. But when I'm in a place that's not familiar, when I'm around people I don't know, I tend to step back. I'm kind of over in the corner holding up the wall. But those social interactions with the people that matter most, they're meaningful for me, Roman, what would you say is the one you probably identify with the most?
So at this point in my life, the thinking introvert spends a lot of time in their own thoughts. They're introspective, imaginative, and tend to analyze themselves, and I would say to death, but analyze themselves and the world deeply. That's where I'm at. I think I probably have, I was definitely anxious introvert my whole young life.
Yeah.
Just the awkward person in the room. Then moved into that social introvert. I don't know if there's a natural progression of like everybody follows this pattern, but I think the thinking introvert is probably who I am at my core, and just didn't know how to tap into that correctly for my whole life,
right?
And was trying to fight that all the time. So, yeah.
I think the path that you guys are describing is probably very accurate in that. College students, the ones that I work with mostly, oftentimes come into the counseling office feeling like who they are isn't okay. One thing I think it's important for every introvert to know is that extroverts will impose themselves on the environment. There's more extroverts in the world, depending on what you read, than there are introverts. And so lots of our kids come from home environments where they feel pretty comfortable. They're with people that they feel close to. Then they come to college and they're in a residence hall and they start feeling like who they are isn't okay, that they need to be different. It can lead to anxiety. It can lead to depression. And so much of what we do at the counseling center is not necessarily about a mental illness. It's more about embracing who you are, understanding it as a strength, understanding it as a temperament, and valuing it versus feeling like you have to force yourself into something that really isn't you. And so I do think, going back to that idea of who you are at your core, that will develop over time. And maybe it does follow, going from an anxious to sort of the restrained, which is observing your environment, feeling less awkward, less anxious. So doing some internal processing that is core to the introvert, and then developing either that thinking or the social introvert. I think that's highly likely.
It's less mental illness and more mental awareness.
Right. And also helping other people understand how you operate in the world, especially at that age. 18 to 25 is so moving from an adolescent place of me, I, my little bubble of what I want and who I am, to moving into adulthood, which is how do I impact the world? How do things I say and do matter? And so if you can embrace who you are and then also try to embrace who others are and then accept yourself, I think the other people will start to accept you too. And find, again, that it's sort of a yin and yang, that you'll notice that there are lots of introverted, extroverted marriages, lots of introverted, extroverted friendships. I know in my office, there's a couple of us that are social workers and several counselors, and the two social workers, myself and a woman named Sarah, we're the first ones through the wall, We're the first ones that are kind of manage something, but it's the thoughtful, kind of persistent engagement from the counselors that are probably going to be core to the person improving. We might manage the crisis on the front end, but they're going to manage that stick-to-itiveness, sort of staying with that person through several sessions to get to a place where they just feel more stable, feel better.
And I love that idea of learning to appreciate each other's strengths because, and I don't know, maybe it's not harder for the introverted person, but I do know that even as an introvert, I really love my extroverted friends, especially depending on what we're doing. If we're somewhere where there's going to need to be someone that's going to need to do the clowning, the talking, the upfront, to be that person, I'm like, let me hide behind you, and I'll add some input every once in a while. Yeah, and I love that working together. I don't see them at all as like, oh, this guy's getting on my nerves. Yeah. In the right situations, I'm like, I love my extroverted friends. I need you.
I'm the same way. I tend to attach myself to them because I'm like, if I hang out with them, they're going to do all the talking and I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. I can sit back and put a couple of really tidbit wisdom things in every once in a while. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I started noticing that I would get invited to stuff by my introverted friends for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Yeah. It's just you're good at a dinner party, and you're good at happy hour. And that's not a terrible thing to be liked for, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest myths or stereotypes that we hear about introverts?
I would say that they don't like other people, or they aren't interested in other people. It just isn't as overt on the front end. I think both of you have mentioned that you're better in small settings with people that you know well. And so it does take a little bit of time, but it doesn't mean that they're not interested or that their lack of response, you shouldn't assume is a negative response. It's that they need a moment. I think I may have mentioned that I've learned over time with the introverts in my life, if I can give them a little bit of time to ponder and consider, I'm going to get a pretty good, thoughtful, well thought out answer. It's funny now that I think about it. We have a woman in my office who is probably the most introverted, and the rest of us will get excited about something and say, let's buy it, let's spend the money, or let's do the thing. And she's like, wait, and so we all value her and we do wait. And then she comes back and gives us the whole lowdown on why it might be a good idea or a bad idea. And it's important, again, to sort of complement each other at work, at home, have both people. Because, if you had two introverts, would you leave the house? I don't know.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
My wife and I are both introverted, and if we weren't forced out with a stick every once in a while.
Right. I have a couple of good girlfriends that are older than me, both introverted, and I marvel at that they can spend several days without having any real human contact and completely fine with it.
Yeah.
So it's a strength.
What about you? What are some big myths that you've heard or felt?
Yeah, I think playing off of what you said, I think there's a preconception that you don't like people, and I don't think that could be more wrong. I'm fascinated by people, but I will just sit and listen because, especially depending on if it's their occupation, a hobby, whatever it is about them, if there's something I'll tap into and I'll find that fascinating, And as they continue to talk, then I'll look for a point to dive into that area, a little more. I also think a part that's a weakness, because I think introverted people are they observe more. If I enter a room in observation mode, then the person that's the loudmouth stands out, is narcissistic, is talking about themselves way too much. I notice that, not like anyone can't notice that if it's really overt.
Mm.
But I notice that, and I'm like, yep, don't like them, and not going to be interacting with that person at all tonight. Which is a weakness, because that may not even be true up front. I might have just walked in at the wrong time.
Right.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the biggest stereotype is that introverts can't be social. Because my wife would argue that I am not an introvert. She would say that I'm an extrovert. But, we have get-togethers for my birthday every year with my closest friends and family, and I enjoy that because, they're in my circle, right? They are the people that I have chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing about introverts. We choose carefully. Mm-hmm. Right. We observe, and then we choose carefully. And I'm very loyal to that group of people. But even though they're at my house, you may find me disappear for 10, 15 minutes because I need to do some recharging before I go back out there and keep going. Yeah. But I enjoy being with them. I do. It does wear me out.
Yeah, for sure.
Dayna, have you seen clients struggle with the guilt or shame for not being outgoing enough?
Sure. Yeah, I think there is a lot of internal self-battery for not being the person that maybe the world or our culture is telling you to be. I read a book recently called The Narcissism Epidemic. I think when you mentioned that, I thought about it, but it's, the culture, the world is be famous, get on TV, be the best one, be the only one. And so I do think that if you have no interest in that, and the world is saying, be that person, it's ripe for sort of that cognitive process of being me isn't okay, being the way I am is weird, it's different, it's not typical. And again, unfortunately, would lead to more depression, more anxiety, more isolation, because, even extroversion, introversion, isolation isn't good. We as people, and I think the Catholic Church is very good at that community of people and that acceptance of different skills, different qualities. Everybody needs some connection. Mm-hmm. It's just based on your temperament, you may go about finding that connection differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's easier to entertain in my own home than to go out to someone else's place where I'm in an unfamiliar environment and I have to be on, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that if my wife and I have something at our house, I can stay engaged longer, so I can stay in social mode if I can hide behind serving. So, hey, do you need something else? Hey, let me go get that for you. And so I can stay social and not have to be engaged talking to people because I'm serving.
You're busy.
Yeah, I'm busy.
It's the Martha and Mary thing.
Right. Yeah. and I'm not even saying that's a strength. It could probably go either way. But I'm just self-aware on that.
I'm guilty of that too. Yeah, I tend to bounce around and make sure everybody's got a drink or food or something. And it's funny because I like doing that because I don't have to fully engage, but then I tend to get stressed out more because I'm worried about everybody else, and so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I definitely relate.
No, that's interesting.
I've certainly observed that in the introverts that I know. My son went to Holy Cross, and he graduated with a class of mostly girls, a few boys, primarily introverts, and there's 4 of them. They meet at least once a week, but much more likely to go to a house than out into the world. My husband too.
In your experience as a counselor, are there any strategies that you would recommend to help introverts manage social fatigue in healthy ways?
I think first and foremost, what we want to do is help them stop those thoughts that they need to be different and stop that sort of inner dialogue that being them is not okay, or it's awkward, or it's weird. So if they could be a little less self-defeating, that's probably the first step. I think also just embracing that, setting boundaries with people, setting boundaries with how much time they spend in social events and knowing what that is. Or that maybe if I'm going to do this, these 2 or 3 social, let's say they went to the football game and they tailgated, Sunday may be a total wash. They may need to completely rejuvenate on Sunday. And, church is a good place to do that. You may be with people, but you can be more contemplative there. I think probably also just creating more of a balance. And I think that's true for every student is instead of, I always compare it to being a beach ball at a rock concert. And so instead of letting the world bat you around and your emotions and how you feel, holding onto the ball and deciding where you're going to put it is helpful for every student. Because there's just lots of options, lots of places, lots of things. And when it's overwhelming for an introvert, what are they going to do but stay in their dorm room? And which isn't going to be helpful. Again, everybody needs some connection. Everybody needs some purpose. Everybody needs, people that understand them and to go through life with.
I've found, like, in busy seasons of my life, the boundary I have to put up is here and no more, or I'll just become worthless to everybody. But in seasons where I'm not as busy, I have to put a boundary on myself that, okay, so at least 3 times this month, you're going to leave the house and go out and do something social with someone. You're not going to sit here all weekend. You're actually going to go out and spend time with your friend.
Yeah.
And because if I don't, then my comfort zone will be like, psh, we got the whole month off. Woo, not leaving the couch. On the weekend, especially.
That's why I'm a leader in the Knights of Columbus.
Yeah, makes sense.
That way it forces me to come out. Otherwise, I'd just be at home all the time.
Yep.
I do notice that, my husband retired a few years ago, and I am more social, so I'll have people over, and he'll come and sort of be a little social and kind of get his need met for it, and then he goes back in. But he's not going to stay for the whole event.
Right.
And I think people that know us as a couple are completely fine with that. But when he retired, he does need a little bit of social contact. Like, I was surprised that he would come out at all, because when he was working, that's all he needed was he'd go to work. Those were, that was his contact with people. He had no interest really in sort of, if I had 3 or 4 friends sitting outside talking, he wasn't going to come out, but now he does. And I think he not consciously knows he needs it, but he's drawn to it a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, and I realize in my heart that I need it, even though I want to, push it away. But especially just with my temperament anyway, just my own personality's a little offbeat and weird. And so the longer I'm away from people, that just turns in on itself, and so it's not a good thing. I have to have other people knock off those rough edges on me. So I'm going back to a question you asked earlier, but I do think there is a lot of introverts judging themselves harshly for not having the skill set that you're talking about, where you sort of motivate yourself to extend yourself beyond your comfort zone. Because it is healthy. It is. It's not like you're an introvert and that's it every day, all the time.
Right.
It's more like a hand of cards that you can play. And working with students or working with people who are introverted to be able to play that extroverted card when they need it benefits them. And it benefits not only in, say, getting a job or working with others, but also maybe feeling better about themselves, in that they're going to get some feedback from others about really liking them and finding value with them. And so if you're always introverting, you're not going to get that feedback from others. One of my favorite introverts who I talked to before this podcast, we jokingly call her Gandhi. So if there's a hard question, there's deep thought,
Yeah.
and we don't know we're going to call her, and we're going to give her a few days, but she's going to get back to us, and it's usually pretty profound, and she's covered all the bases. It's not a impulsive answer. It's something that might even speak to each of us individually. So,
Yep. I remember when I had my own business, and you'd have to post on social media, and I would spend way too long coming up with the perfect post because it needed to be profound and it needed to have the right, like all this, like so overanalyzed on the, it's like it's social media.
Yeah.
But the other side of that, like you're saying, is learning that even in perhaps the weakness of introversion, instead of beating myself up so much, and it's taken time to get there, but one of the tools in my toolbox is just learning to, in the appropriate way, just laugh at myself when I see that super intense side of me rise to the top too much, or I just go, I can't go out today. It's been too much of a week, and then I just laugh at myself. I'm like, you're okay. We're okay to leave the house today. It's okay, and just say that there's that 10-year-old me that doesn't want to, that just wants to sit in his room and not leave, and just point him out and go, we're going out today. It'll be good for us. So.
Well, and I think now with college having so many online classes, all the introverts are leaning in that direction. But honestly, it isn't great.
Right.
No.
It isn't great in terms of learning. It's probably not great in terms of finding your community. Certainly, it lends itself positively, partially. But I think if you let yourself just play the card that you want to play all the time,
Right.
It may not be good.
Yep.
Yep.
It's not definitely.
Yep.
That's why I was always such a huge proponent of living on campus. I mean, for introverts, it's a nightmare. But for me, that's where I found who I am as an adult. Like, I had no idea I was a leader. And I've been a leader for many different organizations and even in my career. And if it hadn't been for me living on campus and being forced to be involved, I wouldn't be who I am today. So yeah, it's very important that us introverts go outside of our comfort zone and kind of push the limits a little bit, but while still being true to ourselves as introverts.
Sure. I think if people can embrace that it's a preference, that it's, I want to say excuse, but it's not permission to just not engage, that it's a preference. Sure, you'd prefer to have smaller groups, no small talk, limited amount of social contact. It doesn't mean that you can't develop, the other side of the coin,
Right.
and that you don't look for opportunities to be introverted kind of in the social world so that you feel stronger.
Right.
You feel more developed because you want to know you can do stuff. You want to know that you have that capacity if you need it.
Yeah, there's nowhere in the world where being more comfortable is better for you.
Yeah.
Like it just is
true.
overall, that's just not a good game plan for life.
Yeah.
The discomfort is a little bit of it, at least, is necessary for growth and for maturing. And I'm never going to be that guy that's going to be the winner of the most interesting person at the dinner party. But to just go, so I'm just not going to go is not for me. It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
I agree with that a lot. One of the things I don't know where I heard this, but it was maybe at a homily, but they talked about suffering, hope, and redemption. That's basically the three things we're doing. And so much of with our students, that suffering part, not very tolerant.
Right. Yep.
But if you can, if you can be a part of them learning that resiliency, that suffering is a part of growth, and that you will be improved from it. 99% of the time, it's going to be helpful. I don't know if that's accurate, but a lot of the time, the struggle is how you grow, and pushing yourself to do the things and to understand other people. Like, I think it's interesting, that second dichotomy on the Myers-Briggs is the sensing and intuitive. Intuitive people have a lot of thoughts, and they have a lot of. It's just generally not very pinpointed. Like this is the way it is. Learning to kind of understand that this is how they process, this is how they do things, and just because it's not like you, doesn't mean it's wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I've noticed that it helps the extrovert. Well, they didn't have to be extroverted friends. It's a little more comforting perhaps when it is one of my extroverted friends that gets me, and they know when I'm at a dinner party, they're like, "Watch Roman. We're gonna have to go over and encourage him a little." That's because I am able to laugh at myself and know that's not my strong suit. So when they come over and they're like, "How you doing?" and I'm like, But it's also, it works both ways, because I also have a very extroverted friend that he was like, "Man, if I ever did a silent retreat, I would just flip out." And I'm like, "I'd be there for you, brother. I would come check on you and make sure you're okay." But
Yep.
anyway, yeah.
I think you need each other. That's for sure.
How do you see introversion fitting within the faith context? Have you seen that introverts experience spirituality or religion differently than maybe others?
I had a lot of thoughts when you. And my first thought is, my hope would be that there's some awareness that God made you the way He made you for a reason and for a purpose, and if that is introverted, that that's a temperament you can use for good. I do think, having spent some time in different faith organizations, and I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but there are things about Catholicism that lend themselves to introversion. I think adoration, having gone through RCIA, and I had I don't remember the name of it, but a mentor person who was already Catholic.
Your sponsor.
Yep, my sponsor. And so we had the opportunity to have pretty serious discussions about, questions about the church. Having been in other denominations that maybe emphasize more extroverted activities, so some of that, walking into the church and there's a bunch of greeters there with donuts, who want to know why you weren't there last Sunday, I don't think that's going to go over that well for the average introvert. I think the structure of the Mass, I think just the understanding that this is what we do, and there's not a push to have to show it, that's my experience with it. And there's just not, it's not very superficial, is in my experience. So there's a lot of things that are meaningful, and I think that appeals to the introvert.
Well, on what you were saying about the greeters, there have been whole seasons of my life where I'm calculating which door has the least amount of people and how I can sneak in and have to talk to the fewest number of people to get to my seat. Like especially like you were saying, not so much in the Catholic world, but yeah, in other faith streams, I would, almost like an Excel spreadsheet or how can I mapped out, how can I get in, and like a Navy SEAL operation or something. But in the church, I think introverts, and maybe some of this is just classic stereotypes, but I do believe an introverted person, they make great prayer warriors because their prayers are going to be intentional and thought through, and not just like, "Oh, you want me to pray? Like now? Yeah, now. Oh, well, and it's going to be pointed. It's going to be intentional.
Well thought
Anything
out.
that needs intentionality, I think, is a great place for an introvert. And if the church would admit it, there's a lot of places that need to be a little more intentional than they are.
Yeah.
It just gets filled with the body because we don't have anybody, so you do it.
So with that said, what advice would you give introverts who feel guilty for needing solitude in a community-centered church?
Good question.
It's deep.
Yeah. What about letting people know that it's okay to be an Indian, not a chief? That being a part of the, the foundation that makes a certain situation go, instead of having to be front and center.
Because even the chief has an advisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody that gives them the wisdom that they need.
Yep.
I noticed, like, from being on church staffs, you'll ask, hey, we really could use some help. And the immediate first thing is someone will say, it's like, oh, I'm not a teacher. I could never do that. I can't stand up in front of. I said, we also need people to set up chairs. Yep. Oh, I can do that. And to some, maybe to someone that is uber extroverted, they're like, they might even be offended, like, I'm better than setting up chairs. Of course you are. I need you to teach the class. But to the introvert, that's not an offensive thing. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm comfortable speaking in public, there's also seasons where I'm like, please just let me set up the chairs.
Sure.
I just would love to set up the chairs and that would be it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And was glad to just have that role. Mm-hmm. Because it was, not because it was, I didn't have to necessarily talk to anybody, but just I found joy in doing that. I see the necessity of it.
And I think, giving people permission to do the thing that feels comfortable, and ideally I assume that's an introvert who understands who they are, who, has that awareness and can say, I don't feel comfortable doing that, or I'm not at a place where that'll work for me, but I can do this. Maybe not being all or nothing. I think, especially in Catholicism, there are opportunities for solitude.
Yeah.
Again, the adoration, the setting up of things.
Yep.
Maybe not being the speaker, but being the person that supports the speaker.
The sound person, the live streamer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things. And kind of the thought behind this podcast was, okay, as an introvert, how can I be involved? And there's so many different ways you can be involved. You don't have to be front and center. Yeah, a lot of these organizations or ministries or different activities in your church, they're going to be forward facing. They're going to be front facing, right? They're going to show you everything in the front. But there's a lot of behind the scenes. A few years ago, the Knights of Columbus at St. Mary's Cathedral, we hosted a class called Into the Breach. It's a program through the Knights of Columbus. And it's about men serving their families and being true Christian men. And there was a lot of planning that had to go behind the scenes to make that happen. Yeah, we had people that were there to help teach and facilitate the conversation, but we still had to plan it. We still had to say, okay, this is going to happen on week 2. This is going to happen on week 6. This is going to happen on week 10. And there was intentionality behind it. And so there's so many opportunities for people, whether they're introverts or extroverts, to contribute to the success of a program or a church ministry because of what they bring. Like the other day, Neely, my wife, she recently got involved in OCIA at St. Mary's, and she was struggling with what to teach for a class that she had signed up to teach. And she's like, well, maybe I need to include this, and maybe I need to include this. And what she was doing was trying to be like all the other instructors on the team. And I'm like, listen, God made you uniquely you. He brought you into this because you have something unique to give. And so don't lose sight of that. Oftentimes we also try to be like somebody else because we're like, oh, that person's amazing. They're really knowledgeable. I need to do it like them. But no, you don't need to do it like them. You need to do it like you, because that's how God made you. That he gave you your personality and your skills and strengths and weaknesses and all that to be able to serve in a way that nobody else can serve.
My spiritual director, who's introverted, and this was how he lived his life. He said, you've got to find your rhythm. But he said, for me, and my point in saying this is that just because you're introverted doesn't mean that you may not be up and have an upfront role, or to be. You're a good public speaker and you're introverted, and so it's not to say that you don't have those gifts, but it's in those gifts my spiritual director told me, he said, I'm good for about 10 weeks. And he said, and then after that, I have to take about 3 days and go on a retreat.
Mm.
He said, and refill my cup. And he
Mhm.
said, if I ignore that, he said, I have about a week of grace. He said, and then I am no use to anyone. And that has been critical.
Yeah. Well, and
Critical information for me to get in my head and live that and go, you cannot do. I may have the same ability in an area that an extrovert has, but they may be able to do it for 54 weeks without needing any downtime.
Yeah.
I just have to know I can do it for this long, and then I have to recharge.
Well,
And that's okay.
And so I think that speaks to how crucial it is for introverts to get to a point of self-awareness. Because the same goes for ministry, in that in order to pour into other people, you need to allow God to pour into you.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't do that if you are not focusing on your own
Spiritual growth.
Yeah, your
And
own
your own
spiritual
energy.
growth, your
Yeah.
own
Yeah.
your own energy. You have to remember, okay, you cannot be as effective in ministry or anything for that matter. I mean, obviously we're talking about how to get involved in your church, but you cannot be effective unless you do what you need to do to make sure that you are being fed and you're being rejuvenated and your batteries being recharged.
Yep.
You have to allow for time to do that in order to be successful in being involved in your church community.
Yeah, and you can't pour out what's not in there.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Another thought I had, about kind of the power of introversion in a faith community is, introverts are very good at observing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Father Bush was at Holy Cross, he was really good at finding students that were sort of on the margins, maybe struggling some, and engaging them and helping them. I just remember that there were a lot of sixth graders just starting, and he would stand in the hall and kind of, observe who was a part of the pack and who wasn't, and engage those kids that, maybe needed a little bit of push or a little bit of acceptance. And so maybe, in a church, having introverts sort of look over the flock, observe the flock.
I like it.
Yeah, and find, people that maybe needed more, like you're saying, intentional interaction, somebody to question how they're doing, what are their needs, things like that.
Yeah, and contrary to popular belief, pastor doesn't just fit the priest. It is a gift from God that you don't have to have a bishop's hands laid on you. Of course you do for the sacraments, but to hold someone's heart in your hand is not someone that just belongs to the clergy. Matter of fact, the clergy would say, oh my gosh, we need more people that can hold people's hearts in their hands. And so what you're saying is absolutely correct. It's someone that can look out. It's that whole starfish on the beach mentality, right? Where you're grabbing them and going, get back in there. And, someone else may come along and go, really? All these starfish? It's like, all I have is time.
Yep.
And somebody's got to take it. So
I think one important question that we need to ask is, and obviously we'll dig deeper into this question as the weeks go on, but what's one way extroverts or church leaders can better understand and support introverts?
I assume that they do this, but recognizing that they're out there,
Mm-hmm.
And engaging them can make your task easier, can add depth to your task. But I think certainly educating yourself about who the general population is, who you're serving is, and that some of those people aren't going to be quite as loud and bright, but it doesn't mean that they're unapproachable or that they don't need you.
I think, and it's probably up to the actual, the introvert themselves as well. Like you said, to become self-aware, to know the boundaries that you need to push yourself, as well as the boundaries you need to put up to not allow yourself to enter burnout. But I would just encourage anyone on a staff or that's volunteering at a church, if you run into introverted people, just somewhere in the back of your head, keep in mind they have superpowers too. And those superpowers, like you were saying, could really be used to your advantage if you learn how their energy works and you don't overtask them, but you just say, I really need you here. And because I'm aware of who you are, I'm going to guard your time. I need you to do this. I'm not going to let you, because sometimes I need someone to watch it, because I'll see a need and I go, oh, and I need to, ooh, and I need to, oh, and there's and I need somebody with some guts, with some chutzpah, to come up to me and go, that's not in your lane right now. I need you right here. I just need you focused on this, because if you put your energy there, this will be awesome. And if you divert it too far and water it down, you're not going to be any good to me. And I've worked for a handful of people that knew how to do that well, man. And so much good stuff happened. Yeah. You know.
Well, and I think as an extrovert, the joy of having some introverts in your life is we are very external in our processing. Like so much of the introverts all happening inside. And they're all kind of like what you say about if I spend too much time alone, there's all this and it never, sees the light of day. The extrovert is just external processing all day long. And you have to have, or I find it's very helpful to have introverts to be a sounding board, to be the reasonable one, to be the one that says, quit it. You don't need to do that. Stay in your lane.
Well, one of my top strengths, and I'm referencing the Clifton Strengths Finder, is deliberative. And in that strength, deliberative, I'm able to look at situations and look at the different scenarios that this particular situation could go. Could go this way, could go that way, could go that way, and could go that way. And what I'm able to do with that is I'm able to look at what could go right and what could go wrong with each of those different possible scenarios. And that helps me make a decision in saying, okay, this is the route we need to take. And so I blame my introversion for that, which is a great thing because I'm able to thoughtfully and intentionally come up with a solution that has a higher outcome of being successful.
You know the woman in my office that is the voice of reason? She's introverted and deliberative. Yeah. And she's like, hold on, and she's going to look at, how the possible ramifications of the decision that all the extroverts are making, And so I wonder if there's some correlation,
Dayna, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to visit with you. And thank you for helping us establish what introversion and extroversion is. And
lots of fun. It was a good time.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up episode 1 of the Introverted Apostle. Thank you for joining us. And remember, even a whisper can move mountains.
I don't think so. No, 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 no. I don't think so. No, 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 no. It's never, ever, 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 ever gonna